Hey, it's Sela Social Studies.
Hey guys, welcome back to Sela Social Studies. Today we're going to be talking about the fifth and final installment of World War II, and that's going to cover the Holocaust. Now, the last section, Winning the War, was long, and it had a lot of information in it that was pretty impactful. This video, however, is not going to be as long, but the impact is going to be just as, if not more, impactful than the last video. Now, up until World War II, the word Holocaust was relatively unknown outside the Jewish culture. The historic definition of the word is a Jewish sacrificial offering that was burned completely on an altar. Since World War II, the average person relates the Holocaust to the systematic state-sponsored killing of over 6 million Jewish men, women, and children, and millions of others by Nazi Germany during World War II. The Germans called their plan the final solution to the Jewish question. Since the Germans did not take a record of the many people that they massacred, the number varies from source to source. However, I believe that it's safe to say that overall there were close to 14 million people murdered by the German death machine. The Jewish population was the largest population to be murdered in the German death camps. However, they were not the only people murdered there. Germans would kill gypsies, civilians of the Soviet Union, Soviet prisoners of war, homosexuals, and the disabled. The occupants of the death camps would die from many causes, including starvation, disease, mistreatment, exhaustion, and murder. Now, starting in September of 1939, Hitler demanded the forced concentration of the Jewish people into ghettos. Poland, which was occupied by the Germans, possessed over 400 of these ghettos, with Warsaw being the largest. In 1940, the Jewish community numbered more than 375,000, or roughly 30% of the population. The groups were then forced to move into a ghetto which was only 2.4% of the area of the whole city. Within 2 months, another 75,000 Jewish refugees packed into Warsaw. The ghetto population density was a staggering 200,000 people per square mile and over 9 people per room. Life in Warsaw was unbearable because of disease and how it spread through the ghetto like wildfire, in resemblance to the American tenement buildings during the time of urbanization. Before the war even officially started, Nazi Germany was inflicting death, malnutrition, and poverty on the Jews all across Europe. In 1939, shortly after the war began, the Germans initiated the T4 program, framed euphemistically as the euthanasia program, for the murder of intellectually or physically disabled and emotionally disturbed Germans who by their very existence violated the Nazi ideal of Aryan supremacy. They were termed life unworthy of life. An economic justification was also employed, as these Germans were considered useless eaters. The Nazis pioneered the use of gas chambers and mass crematoria under this program. The murder of the disabled was the training ground for key personnel who were to later staff the death camps of Action Reinhard. The German public protested these murders. The Roman Catholic Bishop of Munster, Clemens August Graf von Galen, preached against them, and the T4 program was formally halted. Nonetheless, the murder and sterilization of these German Aryans continued secretly throughout the war. Following the invasion of Poland, German occupation policy especially targeted the Jews, but also brutalized non-Jewish Poles. In pursuit of Lebensraum, or German living space, Germany sought systematically to destroy Polish society and nationhood. Germans forced Poles to perform hard labor on survival diets and eventually uprooted them to concentration camps. After years of Nazi rule in Germany, during which Jews were consistently persecuted, Hitler's final solution, now known as the Holocaust, came to fruition under the cover of World War, with mass killing centers constructed in the concentration camps of occupied Poland. There were a number of concentration camps spread throughout Europe. Auschwitz, which was the most notorious and lethal of the concentration camps, which killed over 1 million Jews alone, was actually 3 camps in one. Auschwitz I was a prisoner camp. Auschwitz-Birkenau was an extermination camp, and Auschwitz III was a slave labor camp. German doctors would take pregnant women, young children, the elderly, the handicapped, and sick and direct them to the gas chambers for immediate death. Then the able-bodied prisoners would be selected for forced labor at the camps and nearby factories. The Nazi believed that the slave labor would be an integral part of their economy in the new Aryan world. The prisoners were deprived of daily necessities like food, shelter, clothing, and medical care. The prisoners would be worked to death. When the Soviet Union finally liberated Auschwitz in January of 1945, only 7,000 prisoners remained who were too ill and too weak, resembling a skeleton or dying. Nazis took the remaining on a death march. The Holocaust was one of the worst atrocities in history, and it needs to be remembered for its importance and to be sure that nothing like this ever happens again. Okay, guys, I'll see you next time on Sealess Social Studies when we start talking about the Cold War.